What up, Nick's gang? Nick's gang party of one. How's it going? It's Wednesday. It's Wednesday morning. Let me turn this down. Yeah, the icon for today is the Matrix outage because basically none of my chats are working and it's heartbreaking. But apparently they had to restore from a database backup, which takes apparently a day to spool up. It's nightmare cold start of a thing. It is in fact Wednesday, my dudes. But let's see. I've been working on a cool thing. Let's start with the cool thing. So, I've shown off the GUI demo before. Let's see if I have. Yeah, I have another one. So I did some cool stuff, and we're gonna look at it again. So this might just. Let's see if this makes my CPU upset of doing streaming and this at the same time. So this is our lovely eGUI demo brought to us by Retail. So if I am in Ergot mode, we can see that it's not doing anything. If I switch to simulated, we can see that we start getting data. I can increase the number of samples, so basically it scrolls less far. But we can also see that even in simulated, you might not be able to see because it's compression, but it's at 1,667 hertz, which seems fast even for our simulated data. But I'm going to do a cool thing, and I'm going to grab my board and I'm going to plug it in. And then we're going to go over to the Ergot data source. We can see that it starts plotting, and kind of like before, if I move it around, we can see that it does data things. And then if we go back to simulated, it goes back to simulated data. We go back to Ergot, it goes back to this, and we can kind of swap back and forth between the two of them. And the reason why this is interesting, because we could kind of do this before. Oh, rip, Matrix 8 status. The cool thing about this, and what I've been changing in my most recent PR, is before we had, essentially there was a channel. So when we were in simulator mode, we would spawn up a task that was feeding simulator data to a channel. And then the GUI application would pull from that channel. It was I think it was either a Tokyo or a STUD MPSC channel. I think it was a STUD one, and so it was just sending things because the application itself is kind of like a callbacky kind of thing. We get called every time that the desktop wants to render an update. So it's not async, and so all of our Ergot channels and things like that had async methods and things on them. Well, what I did instead is, instead of switching back and forth when you go into simulator mode, when we start the application, we actually just spawn a send simulated data task. So this is always running, and we have a task that just at that 1,600 times per second rate is always sending simulated data as a broadcast message locally. So what this does, this is a new method. This sets the TTL to 0, which means we'll never forward this on to another device. And it's sending simulated data. And this means that then in the app, instead of having a whole separate channel for this, the app just has a subscription to this topic, and it listens to it. And depending on which mode we're in, if we're in simulated mode, we only accept packets that come from the local address. And if we're in Ergot mode, we only accept packets that don't come from the local address. So basically we switch, because the subscription will get messages from both the simulated device, and if there's a real device there, it will get messages from that. So essentially what we do here is we filter between those two, so that we're only listening to the proper one, and then we're just always graphing, which means there's no extra channel anymore this is just like the whole app is using Ergot for communication, sometimes from itself, and then sometimes from a remote device. What I probably should do is, well, figure out some way to make this a little smarter, like maybe an endpoint that starts and stops the streaming, so that we're not just constantly firing and ignoring like 2,000 packets a second, but the packet handling is nothing compared to the user interface rendering and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm actually very excited about that. But the answer is it required some things. Some of which I'm not entirely sure are sound yet. So we'll get to that. But we can see in the diff. Let's do this and let's get rid of the sidebar. So I mean, we changed a bunch of stuff so that we're not using an extra pipe, and so that we're just using Ergot as basically, yeah, the task does just scream into the void. But the more interesting stuff is what changed in the inside of Ergot itself, because the reason why, so there was a couple things that were awkward that didn't work before. One was we didn't have a broadcast local. So whenever you sent a broadcast, it would use a TTL of 16, which means we'd also be screaming at our microcontroller, just throwing packets at it for fake simulated data. I still haven't totally figured out like how to do this in a better way so that you're not sending messages to someone who doesn't care. But yeah, we'll figure that out at some point. Probably something like remembering who said I don't care about a message, and then having some kind of, okay, just don't forward those kinds of messages to them if they said I don't care, at least for some like amount of timeout. So then they're only handling like some messages per second instead of 2,000 messages per second. So that was like a pretty easy fix. And then the second one, which was also sort of easy, was having a try receive method. I don't know where exactly that is. Try receive. So essentially just adding a method that sees if there's a message. So instead of awaiting, so like normally you await on a future, this basically just does the like, is there a message? If yes, cool. If no, no. So this was fairly easy, but then the issue was that the app code is a function that gets called over and over. So normally what we do when we receive messages in Ergot is we pin the receiver and then we call it again and again. But that's somewhat difficult to do because right now we require that we have like a pin and mute, which means we're like borrowing the data. And what I want to be able to do, particularly for desktop devices, is call something like subscribe boxed, which consumes the socket, pins it, and then we can hold on to this receiver as long as we want. It's pinned, and then when we drop it, we also drop the underlying socket and things like that. Which means that if we don't want to duplicate all of our socket interfaces everywhere, which would be a huge pain in the butt, we need to sort of be generic over either like two types. Basically, pin and mut socket, or pin box socket. And this gets weird. I tried using like deref mute to work, which kind of does work. You can do something like pin k where k deref mute target equals socket, sort of. This sort of works. But I ended up just writing some unsafe code. The way I have it now is probably actually... it's maybe unsound, because right now I don't actually keep the lifetime. So basically what I do is Let's go find this. There's somewhere where I have some kind of new socket pointer type, basically, that holds a pointer to the pinned item, and then it has a function that's like a drop function that gets called, basically. And so when you have a reference, it does nothing. Like, it doesn't do any kind of drop. If we say that it's a pin box drop, then we restore it back. We take the pointer, and we take it. Let me make sure that I have. I do leak. I actually should do into raw is what I should do here. So yeah, I think I'm gonna go back, and you can see a lot of this change is getting rid of this lifetime. But I think what I probably need to do is restore that lifetime and make it so that when you give it a box, that lifetime's static. And when you don't give it a box, the lifetime is the lifetime of the pin. So this is unsafe code. I think it's fine right now, but actually I'm not, like, I'd be more comfortable if I had the lifetime in there, because then the compiler is more likely to catch me if I do something wrong. So yeah. This is just a kind of, the GUI was an interesting case of, like, hey, I've been saying that we should make Ergot nice for all of your message passing needs, yet in this demo, we're actually only using Ergot half the time. We're not using it at all when we're in simulator mode, and we're using a whole nother channel. Is this Ask Eliza unsafe? You know, there's a lot of people who know unsafe better than me. Yeah, I don't know. It's definitely, if I had someone, it would be good to have someone who has a second set of eyes on it. I'm not sure if there are any folks in the Matrix or who are currently helping out with Ergot who are as comfortable with unsafe. So definitely, if there are folks watching who are more comfortable than I am with unsafe, or less comfortable, honestly, probably, hit me up. I'm always down for a code review. But yeah, we'll see. Yeah. I did also change one other thing, which was to detach sockets when their handle is dropped. I had some fun double free problems before when I did something similar, but that was actually trying to drop the socket and not just detach the socket. But yeah, we'll check that out at some point. I guess it means I need to write more tests and run them against Miri is what the answer is. So yeah, that's what I've been working on. I'm gonna clean that up. Ooh, cool. Just got some cool news. Okay. Yeah, I got cool news. I'll share more about that later, maybe. We'll see what that goes. If it works, it's safe, right? Yeah, definitely with safe rust. Not so much with, I mean, I can go show what that code looks like, because it's a spicy one. But essentially, like, yeah, I don't know. The socket stuff is the spicy inner guts of Ergot. The hope is to contain the blast radius, which is why I actually put so much effort into reusing the lowest level bits. Like, some of the higher level sockets go out of their way to not duplicate anything, because it means that I can keep all of the unsafe code in the blast radius. But yeah, raw owned is one of the spicier parts of this, because this is the stuff that handles all the V tables and everything like that. So yeah, it's fun stuff. Good to see you, Dion. Sad that there's no chat, so I guess we're hanging out on YouTube now and mostly on Blue Sky. But yeah, like I said, I'm probably gonna chicken out a little bit and bring the lifetime back. I tried doing something like either ref mute or making like a socket handle, but honestly, actually, it kind of worked, except for I started getting weird errors. What were they? They were like, type is too general, or type is not general enough, or something like that, which basically, if you search for that error, is one of the few times that Rust makes a not great error. Let me see if I can, yeah, lifetimes are still sad. So let me check out, if I do like a check all, it gives you like an awful error message that's like, oh no, this, I need to do crates, ergot, test. So I think it was specifically the doc tests for some reason. They give you this awesome error like, one type is more general than the other. Expected socket found socket. And this isn't like I have two versions of the crate. This is just like some higher kinded lifetime error that I think is saying that something is not send. But I went through and even like slapped send impls on everything. But this is probably just some like scary higher kinded type error. It's not a great one. This basically made me run away and switch back to some unsafe, basically, because this is with like everything is using. I have this like K target deref mute kind of thing. Yeah, I could try sending that to someone. It's kind of like a known, hey, higher kind of type errors are awful. But yeah, I can maybe open a report. Yeah, it's not particularly useful. All right, see you later, Alexandra. I'm probably gonna wrap up here in a second as well. Let's see what branch was I on? I was on stream touch-ups. Okay, so yeah, I'm probably gonna do that. I gotta run some errands today. I will be back at 8 p.m. I hope chat's back. Good to see everyone in chat. If anyone has any questions, now would be a great time. Otherwise, I'm gonna wrap up in a minute so I can go run some errands. I'm getting some hearts in the chat. I appreciate that. All right. I will talk to you all later. I hope you all have a great day. Bye-bye.